Is Christmas too commercialised, or is it still a special time? Well, with me to discuss this is an Anglican bishop and former chaplain to the Queen, Dr. Gavin Ashenden, and Richie Thompson, Director of Public Affairs and Policy at Humanists UK. Thank you both very much for joining me today. Richie, I'm going to come to you first. What are your views on this? Do you agree with Terry Collins? Do you think Christmas has become too commercialised?
I don't know. I think it's a difficult question. I think it varies from person to person. I think obviously some people do spend too much money at Christmas. If you're spending more than you can afford, or if you're buying things because you think that you should be simply just giving other people very expensive gifts, then I think that's obviously a mistake. But I think lots of other people get other things out of Christmas. So if you ask people what they think Christmas is all about, the thing they say more than anything else is spending time with family. And obviously not all gift giving is simply commercial. I think that meaning in life is very much something that we all create for ourselves, and the most meaningful gifts are those that really create experiences that you can share as the giver with the recipient. And that's obviously harder during the pandemic when we can't go out and do as many things. But I think if I think about how my family celebrates Christmas, I don't think it's too commercial.
No, but I've seen a lot of families who it very much becomes a kind of competition, and certainly children. I mean, I have relatives who have kids, and the amount that they're expected to spend, even if they've got no money at all, the amount that they are expected to spend is quite astronomical. And, it's almost like they're afraid of their children, that they're buying their love. Do you think people are buying love at this time of year?
I think that when that happens, if that happens, that's very sad. And obviously such pressures should be resisted to the extent to which they can be. It's definitely it's hardest with children, where so much in terms of TV adverts in particular is geared up to requiring children to get the next big gift. But I don't think it's particularly changed in that sense, unfortunately, over recent decades. And I think there are lots of other meanings and values to Christmas, quite apart from, traditional religious meanings that lots of people get out of it. And I think focusing on those, the coming together of family, the spending time together indoors, cozying up round the fire, and perhaps some present giving and some television watching, I think that's all to the good.
Well, let's talk about some of those values that are associated with Christmas. And Dr. Ashenden, if I can bring you in here, because is there a risk that in losing what we term the true meaning of Christmas, insofar as when the festival and the season becomes so focused on commercialisation, is there a risk that we are losing, firstly, what Christmas actually means, which is the celebration of the birth of Christ, but also that inevitably, once we've lost that message, we will go into those commercial areas and we'll start worshipping the god of Mammon. Is that a risk?
In one sense, yes, it is. But I think what's going on at the moment is that we have two philosophies, and Richie was quite right, saying we're trying to work out a meaning of how we do our lives. And the secular meaning is a perfectly honourable one. It sort of descends, I suppose, from Epicurus and cultures that have looked at what it's like to be in the middle of winter and the dark time of the year and said, how are we going to cope with this and cheer ourselves up? It's perfectly reasonable to try and cheer yourselves up at the dark time of the year. But Christianity is always in a kind of struggle with its surrounding culture. And we're the decline of a culture now where Christianity has been losing the battle. But what it does is to offer people a map for a meaning and to say, at this dark time of the year, we're going to give you a code to understand good and evil, love and suffering, forgiveness and revenge. And if you want the real meaning of Christmas, you'll find a way of dealing with life that carries you through the rest of the year, rather than just managing to subdue most of the misery of being in the middle of winter. So there are two ways of doing Christmas. You have to choose which one gives you most meaning.
And can I ask you, Dr. Ashenden, do you feel that without the religious message, the message of the Bible, that we are more susceptible to I suppose, the darkness, the gloom, that we lose that meaning, we lose faith in humanity if we don't have that? In other words, is it possible to have a fulfilling, meaningful existence without that degree of spirituality?
Yes, of course it is, but in my experience, it just doesn't work as well. I mean, humanism is a very honourable way of living one's life, but to my mind, it's a bit like having rechargeable batteries. I think what Christianity does is to recharge one's capacity for vision. And I say that as somebody who, it's not easy being a human being. It's not easy living with ourselves. We have aspirations that we always fail to deliver on, at least almost all of us do. And one of the things Christianity does is it allows the forgiveness of self, the forgiveness of others, love without limits, turning the other cheek. It injects into society a capacity for hope and for love that I don't think human beings manage very well by themselves. And if we look at, for example, the history of the 20th century, which was a humanist century, Christianity shoved to the margins. The evidence is that in this struggle between light and darkness, goodness and evil, we don't do very well on our own, but Christianity has the capacity of changing people. And if we look through history, I think there's a good argument for that.
Richie, do you feel that you're missing out on something because you don't believe in God?
Absolutely not. And I think that spans from how I celebrate Christmas, which most people nowadays don't see as a religious festival, and indeed is a festival that predates Christianity. It's got pre-Christian, concurrent with Christian and now post-Christian influences, through to how I live my life more generally and how others live their lives. I think people are perfectly happy and living good, happy lives without religion. And I think that lots of the good in this country, such as the NHS, which was established by three humanists, can happen completely separately from any particular religion.
Well, two very different ways to live your life, but you both sound very happy to me. Dr. Gavin Ashenden and Richie Thompson, thank you so much for joining me today on Free Speech Nation.